Lesson 61, 62, and 63 from Learn Violin Fast, Book 2. We're progressing to more challenging pieces within this book as we have a lot more string crossing. So what your hands have to do continues to get more and more complicated. Not only do you have to hold the bow a certain way, hold and move your right hand a certain way, hold the violin, your left hand, place your fingers. Now we're introducing more and more changes. We're doing slurs. We're also starting to use a pinky more often. And then we have to change strings back and forth. So all those changes is what creates the challenges on the violin. So 61, Song of the Wind exercise. Here it's tricky because it has a string crossing that's fast. So if you look ahead at number 62, the Song of the Wind, it has that little passage, and that's deceptively very difficult. It's difficult because every note is new, none of the notes are repeated, and it jumps, and you have to do string crossing on the same finger. So you have 1 on E, 3 on A, 3 on E. So we're not going to pick up our third finger, we're going to roll it over, 1 on E, and then open E. And so one of the techniques that we use when we have to use the same finger on different strings, one after the other, instead of picking it up, and that will create most likely an open string, we just roll the finger over without picking it up. So this is essentially what Song of the Wind exercise does. It goes back and forth between that string crossing, and it repeats notes much slower. So 61, pay attention to keeping your left hand fingers curved in the right places. And when you have to go from 3 on A to 3 on E, do not pick up your finger. Roll it over. And if it's a little bit like off to the side when you go from the A to the E string, that's totally fine. It's better to have, for some notes, an incorrect finger position than to have an open A and introduce new notes. So sometimes we sacrifice the perfect hand positions for better musical outcome. So this is number 61, Song of the Wind exercise. It is all in quarter notes, so we're going to be in the middle of the bow with a nice détaché. You'll notice how I'm not moving my elbow, and the way to prevent this, make sure you're thinking you're standing tall, but you're not letting your back muscles pull the arm back. So make sure you only engage your arm muscles, you relax, and you let go. And remember our trick when we learned playing with the bow, scratch you. You can think of point your hand in front of you, and that will get your hand to open up. The biggest challenge will be squeezing really hard so that your hand can open up. So you're going to elbow, and you're going to pivot at the shoulder. So make sure you relax, strong fingers, go you, scratch you, engage your arm, do not engage your back. Song of the Wind, exercise number 61. 3, 4. I hope you notice how I kept my left fingers down, and then also we have to do the same technique on the first finger. We're 1 on A to 1 on E, we'll roll it over. And in general, you notice how my fingers are not sticking up when I play the violin. You want to try to keep them, if anything, hovering, nice and relaxed, over where they need to go. Never sticking up, never going flat, and also being behind the violin is really, really bad. It means you're squeezing a lot. All right, now number 62, Song of the Wind. I'm going to play it up to speed. It's pretty fast. You'll notice that we have here lifts. We have a crescendo, forte, piano. Then we have to use a pinky. Then we have to do a very quick lift, and then a pinky again on a forte. So yes, this is a very easy song, but if you were to execute all those directions accurately, it's actually quite difficult, especially at the beginning of your musical journey. So just a few things again. It's on the A and E string. Going up, we're going to use open E. And the reason for the forte and the piano, when the same thing is repeated, is to make it interesting. One of the most common and one of the best things to do is if you have any material or any notes that is exactly repeated the same way, would never play that material exactly the same way. So if you have 5 notes that are repeated twice, one after the other, the most unmusical and uncreative thing is to play it the same way. So for example, you would play. So you notice how that same 5-note phrase or little motif repeats twice, and if you play it exactly the same way, it's quite boring. So the reason for fortes and pianos, more often than not, is when you have the same material repeated, we try to change it to make it interesting. And the more changes you have in your playing, the more interesting it is, not only for the listener, but also for the performer. Yes, it makes it more challenging to create and do those changes properly, but it also makes it more fun because now you're doing more. You're not just playing notes, you're now making the notes interesting and you're focusing on music. So here's number 62, up to speed. If this is too fast, you can go to the settings wheel and you can slow it down. For now, I'm just going to do performance speed. 1 and 2 and 3. Did you notice how I added a crescendo that wasn't in the music? At the end of the first line, we had a piano, and then I stayed quiet at the beginning of the second line, and I made a crescendo to the forte. So I would love for you to start thinking about how you can make your music more interesting, and you should never play with no changes. There should always be a crescendo, diminuendo. There should always be some kind of change in what you're playing on top of producing a beautiful sound with accurate notes. So number 63, we're moving on, repetitive string crossing on D and A strings with high twos and low twos. Now we're introducing a skill that we haven't really learned yet. We're going to learn it in the next lesson, but this is a little preview. So high two, so far with our left hand, we've always used a whole step between 1 and 2. So it goes on the tapes, and the easiest way to think about it is just make a peace sign. Now a low two is when you keep your 1, your pointer, on the tape, and you then squeeze your middle finger from the whole step to a half step. So your middle finger is going to be in between tapes or a half step from first finger, or if you recall, 5%. So you're going to keep the 1 in the A string here, and I want you to see if you're going to be able to just put the 2 next to it. So we haven't learned the why and the how yet. I just want you to see if you can do this skill. Right? We're gonna do it now so that when we learn about it later with more detail, we already have an idea. So when you get to the A string, you're not going to put the 2 on the tape. You're going to put it in between the tape, a half step from the 1. You could think of it as a piece and a squeeze, but make sure you're not squeezing your fingers. The idea is just that they're squeezed together, right? So again, your fingers should always be curved. You should be pressing the string, but with moderate pressure, right? So don't squeeze the hand, but the idea is that you just squeeze your fingers together, right? So here is 63, repetitive string crossing in D and A. And now we're introducing a new skill that we're going to learn later in later lessons in more detail. For now, know that if you're on the A string, you need to put your fingers, your pointer on the first tape, or first whole step, and your second finger next to it. 63. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one thing that you're going to learn about later, but right now I want to mention, is when you have a low 2, when we take our fingers and you squeeze your 2 together, or any low fingers for that matter, whatever comes after, you have to relax and stretch. So I don't know if you noticed, after I played a low 2, I relaxed, actually had to stretch my 3 to the proper tape. So when our fingers generally like to be together, so when we do whole and half steps, this is really easy, but then when we do a low 2, it will tend to pull the 3 down with it. So just know that anytime you make a low finger, like a low 2, low 1, low 4, anything, whatever comes after, you usually have to do a little bit of a stretch to make sure it goes back up to the normal place. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe if you find these tutorials helpful, and I'll see you in the next videos. Thank you.